Who is Ernest Becker? Anthropologist. Who is he? Did anybody look him up? You did? Good. What did you read about him?
Probably a few books, right?
Yeah.
Some about death and like.
There we go. Now we're on the right track. So he wrote a book called The Denial of Death. And I can't for the life of me, I want to say it came out like in 1976, I think it was. Late 70s. I don't know, I can't for the life of me understand why it became a bestseller. But it did. Because it's a difficult book to read for an average audience, you know, like a common audience. But it did become a bestseller, and it even won the Pulitzer Prize for literature, which is a pretty big deal. It's like close to like winning a Nobel Prize, to win a Pulitzer Prize. Pulitzers are for individual works. Nobel Prizes are for lifetimes of achievement. Anyway, he writes this book called The Denial of Death, and essentially in it he writes that a fear of death is the thing that drives all human action. That all of us are so afraid of dying, we're so terrified of dying, subconsciously. It doesn't even have to be like on the surface. Some people do walk around every day with a constant, consistent fear of death. I know that some people fall asleep every night with a fear of death. But he's talking about like an unconscious thing that motivates our actions. And he argues that pretty much everything that we do is geared towards this attempt to deny death, to prolong life, to put death off, to not have to deal with it. So you might think like, well, if I eat breakfast, that's like trying to deny death. He would say, yeah, because you're eating so you can survive. You know that well, we're in school. Yeah, you're in school because you're trying to join yourself to something larger. And so you think about your life. So you think about your life, and you're one person. There you go. And how big is let's say National City? You know, it's pretty big as a city, but it's also pretty small compared to San Diego County. And how big is San Diego County? That's pretty big, except compared to Southern California. And how big is Southern California? That's pretty big, but not compared to California. California's not very big compared to the United States. The United States isn't very big compared to the world. But that's pretty big, right? The world? No, it's not even the biggest planet in the solar system. And how big is our solar system? Huge. Yeah. Was it this class I was talking about Jupiter last week? Yeah. Any of you guys like looking at stars, planets? Yeah, right now it's a pretty cool time because you can go out at night and you can look up in the sky and see Jupiter. You can see Saturn right now, but it's clear, it's obvious. Anybody know how to look for it? Just go out there, look up at night, and find the brightest object. That's going to be right now Venus is out there too. That's the brightest one. Venus looks like silvery, white silvery, and it isn't like, oh yeah, I can kind of see it. Just go out there and look, and you'll see it. It's not twinkling. It's just a light out there. That's Venus. If it's silvery white, you can see that one right now. And then if you go out there and you look up and you see like a little orangish one, that's Jupiter. And then if you look just over to the left of I guess if you're just the right of it, you'll see like a little blue dot. It's a bit fainter, but you can still see it. And that's Saturn. But when you look up at Jupiter, think about it, man. How long does it take to get to Jupiter? Anybody know? About a year and a half for traveling. Yeah, it's about 6 to 9 months to get to Mars. It's about a year and a half to get to Jupiter. So if you're looking up at it, you can go, wow, that's almost 2 years of my life to get there. And then if you want to get back, so if you want to go to Jupiter and back, almost 4 years to get out there. But the point is that gives you a perspective of how far away these things are. And that's just Jupiter. Now everything that goes beyond that. Now you think about how big our solar system is. And then you think about how big our solar system is, which is nothing compared to the size of our galaxy. And we're just, one little solar system that's orbiting on some inconspicuous edge of this one galaxy. And how many galaxies are in the observable universe? About 2 trillion. That's a lot of galaxies. And each of those galaxies has around 500 million stars. And each of those stars represents a solar system. And so now you're trying to get a sense of the absolute grand scale, how massive this thing is. You ever seen those videos of Like they'll show you like, Earth, and then they'll move over to the side and you'll see like Earth compared to Jupiter, and then Jupiter compared to the sun, then our sun, our star compared to other stars. It's unreal when you start seeing how big some of these things are. Now, let's pull it way back down. Here you are now in National City. How significant are you in all of that? You're the center of your own universe, absolutely. But that's not very much. So now you're starting to get a sense of how little you are. Now the question becomes, well, not even I guess a question, but I guess it is a question. How meaningful is your life? To you, it's meaningful. How meaningful is this person sitting next to you in English class? How meaningful is it to the person sitting next to you in your math class? I don't know. Probably not very. I wonder if we fast forward 10, 15 years, how many of you will remember the name of the person sitting next to you right now? And you'll move on to other people, and other people will become meaningful to you, valuable to you. But you won't remember my name. You won't remember the name of the person sitting next to you. And you won't remember a lot of these kinds of things, unless there's a reason for it to become meaningful to you. So in other words, as you move through life, how many of you know your parents' names? Why do you know your parents' names? Why do you know their names?
I never heard it.
They told you, but why would you remember it?
Because
They're important to you, so they're meaningful to you. So we'll remember those things that are meaningful to us. We'll remember those things that are meaningful to us. Okay? So now you can start to realize what's meaningful to you by the kinds of things that you remember, the kinds of things that you can commit to memory. So now, you have you, let's say, and then you've got, let's say, your parents. Anybody have any siblings? How many siblings do y'all have? 2,
5,
5,
7.
7. Great. We'll make a few. Boom. Yeah. Whole kindergarten. A basketball team out there. Yeah. So now, any of you guys planning to have any children?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
How many kids y'all plan on having? 3?
Oh, no.
2? 2? Alright, so we'll put 2.5 kids. Yeah.
2 dogs. A dog.
We've all got that person in our family, Yeah, I guess he's my brother, but. But it's true. It's fucked up, but true. So now we can start thinking about all the other people in your family now who have, you'll know like your cousins, you'll know your nieces and nephews, and then they'll know their cousins and all the dog. Oh, is a dog meaningful?
Yeah.
I can't draw a dog.
Just draw a stick man on the floor.
And then I try and you give me crap over it. Just do this guy. Do it. That sucks. Art. There, now you know it's a dog. He says art. Art.
You forgot the tail.
It literally means what?
You got a tail. So now the dog is valuable and meaningful to you.
The cup of the dog looks like a fish.
You know what? Fine, the dog's dead. Nice job.
He killed the dog.
You're half a child killed it. Nice job. Way to raise half a person. So now this is a prison reach. So now you understand. So now the dog was meaningful to you, but you all killed it because you made fun of it. Now you made it feel bad about itself. So walk into traffic. Nice job. So now you've got 2.5 children. I'm assuming you got a spouse. And then now your brothers and sisters, your siblings will have those kinds of things too. Now you start to see how huge your family is. Now, are you going to know their names? Yes. Why? Because they're meaningful to you. So Becker is arguing this. When you, why? Well, I ask this question: why is it that we have this drive to do this desire to make more of us? And Becker argues it's because you fear death, and that this is a way that we transcend death. You by yourself, out in the universe, absolutely meaningless. Or maybe you matter, like, we'll say 0.0001. Okay? Now, if you find somebody else, and you fall in love with them, and you guys are together, how meaningful are the two of you together? Times 2. It still isn't super meaningful, but it's still twice as meaningful as it was. And now you start adding family to it, you start adding friends to it, and you argue that this is why we form families. It's not, I mean, yeah, there's a biological thing there, but especially in the modern day, there isn't so much of a need to grow the biological. Because before, we had to have it to perpetuate the species. We're doing all right. We got 7 billion of us on the planet. There's lots of us around, so we don't really have to do that in the way that we used to have to do it. So why is it that we do it? And he says that we grow these families because it adds meaning to our life. Because it adds meaning to us specifically because it joins us to something that's larger than itself, than ourselves. Intuitively, we recognize the littleness of our own lives, that we're just one person. So how is it that we make ourselves more, a little bit less little? I guess we can't say larger when we're so small. But how do we make ourselves a little bit less little? By joining ourselves to somebody else, and then making more, and then joining ourselves to other people. So we do things like we cheer for sports teams. Anybody in here a big Padres fan? A couple of you. Okay, so you go through campus and you're used to it. You see a bunch of people with Padres stuff. And you're kind of like, Padres, these are my people. Especially if you're a big fan. I see somebody walking down the hallway with a Los Angeles hat. Huh.
Me.
That's got nothing to do with me though, right?
You're the first to get shot anyway.
No, dude. We got the martyrs right here. Go check on it. Yeah, hell no, man. You guys chose your desks. You won't be remembered. I think, one scream, right? That's nothing. 2 screams is a problem. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So you may. All right, so if I see somebody walking down the hallway with like a Dodgers hat, I'm like, all right, my people's there. Because they're not just wearing it because they're living in San Diego. Some people will be wearing it and they're like, oh, I'm just from San Diego, so I wear San Diego hats and stuff like that. Sometimes you see that with LA stuff too, like, oh, I just like the hat. But you see it, and then there's something there where you kind of join yourself with sports teams. This is one of the reasons that we take it so seriously. Like when the Dodgers and Padres play, yeah, there's some fun bantering that goes on there. But man, some people get so serious about it, And that's one of the things. Like, hey, I love my team. I love the Dodgers, man. I love Dodger Stadium. I grew up, went to hundreds and hundreds of games at Dodger Stadium, literally. But I don't like going there, man, anymore. Because people there can just be such jerks. I'm sure some of you heard, like, a couple of years ago, a guy was beaten into a coma on an opening day because the guy was wearing a Giants hat, And it's like, yeah, you feel like, what is this thing now where it's not even just like you're cheering for your team, but it's almost like you think you're part of a gang. Especially people who've never picked up a baseball in their lives. But they'll tell you they did. Maybe. Oh, no, but when I was a kid, I was getting scouted. Really? Yeah, I was like 12 years old. Shut up. You have no idea what you're talking about. 12 years old getting scouted. And by the way, I do hear those kinds of stories from people. I was like 13 at Las Palmas, and I had the Padre scouts coming out. The Padres were not scouting at 13, stupid. That didn't happen. I wonder what they're in. Well, I'll leave it at that. You can probably figure out what that person's motives really were scouting you at 13. And so you join yourselves to these kinds of teams because it makes you larger than you actually are. It joins you to something that's bigger than yourself. This is one of the reasons that we join political parties. When we think about like why do people join political parties? Is there any political party out there that really represents everything that you believe? Are there not parts of the Democrats and parts of the Republicans and parts of the Libertarians that you agree with? Like a big mishmash of all these different positions? And yet people will join a political party and vote for their candidate no matter what. Why? That's my party. That's my team. That's my fill in the blank. That's my country. That's my fill in the blank of anything. And Becker argues that this is why we do it, because it's a way of making our life more meaningful, of multiplying our existence in this way. You know? Because, I mean, I wonder how many of you are, actually feel like you actually do love yourselves, and your life is actually meaningful to you, not just in the biological sense where you haven't really thought about it, but you really do sit there and realize how much you're, like how wonderful you actually are. And that doesn't mean that you're perfect the way that you are. Of course, there's a lot of room to grow, man. And that's part of being okay. That's part of loving yourself, is wanting to maximize yourself. Loving yourself is not sitting there saying, I'm wonderful and great just the way I am. Loving yourself is looking at yourself and saying, I'm capable of so much more, and I want to fulfill all of that. And that's the same as loving your future children as well. At the very beginning of the semester, probably the first week, I think I made a comment where I asked how many of y'all wanted to have children. And a bunch of you raised your hands. And I said, well, the decisions that you're making today are going to affect your children in the future. And so maybe it's a good time to start taking our lives seriously. Because the things that, the decisions that you make today are going to have you in a certain position down the road. And that's the position that you're going to be bringing children into the world under. And I wonder how many of us would make different decisions if we really did think about it that way. You know? It's like, one of the reasons that you should pay attention in your math class, even if you don't like math. One of the reasons that you should try very hard in your math class, even if you don't like math, even if it's difficult, especially if it's difficult for you, is because someday you're going to be parenting a kid who's going to be sitting at a table like, I don't want to do this homework. I don't want to do this. This is hard. And it'd be a wonderful thing for you to be able to say, it was difficult for me too, but I did it. Rather than having to say, hey, listen, I didn't do it when I was your age, and look where I am now. I don't mean that in a sense of like, a miserable failure in life because you didn't do geometry. That's not what I mean. I mean in the sense of you're not in a position to actually speak authoritatively about here's how you can better your life. Persevere, try, work hard. I did it, so I know it's possible. Instead, we kind of push those things off onto kids and expect them to do better than we did. But we can talk about it now, which means we know better now. It's one of the reasons we should maximize our lives. Not just because we love ourselves, but that is a great way of seeing how much you love yourself. Do you want the best for yourself? Or do you want better for your friends than you want for yourselves? If your friend was living the way that you are, and you really cared about them, would you give them different advice than the advice that we give ourselves and follow ourselves? Is the advice that you're following right now, or the things that you're doing right now, is that the same advice that you're going to give your future children? Hey man, ditch. Maybe. I'm not saying you shouldn't ditch. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying that whatever it is that you're doing, is that the same advice that you would give people you cared about? And that might be a good way of approaching our lives, to live our lives in such a way, to live our lives as though we're somebody who we care about. You could kind of guide and direct your favorite person's life. Would you have them do what you're doing right now? Something to think about, to work out. But this is how it is, he says, that we translate our littleness into meaningfulness on the largest possible level. We join ourselves to religions, we join ourselves to families, we join ourselves to sports teams, we join ourselves to countries, we join ourselves to ideologies, to political parties, as a way of multiplying our meaningfulness. As a way of multiplying the impact that we have on the world. So that when we leave it, we've left some kind of an impression of ourselves on the world. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday. Denial of death.